Well, Soccer 605, we're here with Rich Jensen, President of South Dakota Soccer Association. Just want to have a little visit, Rich, about the state of soccer in South Dakota and how things are going.
Thank you. And, it's always good to be here, and I love getting involved, and we want to tell the soccer story every way we can. And there's nothing like telling it to Soccer 605, because that's how everybody in the state gets to know what these things are and how we're going. So the question is, what is the state of soccer in South Dakota State Soccer Association? And, we're going through some struggles. The entire nation is going through some struggles right now, and everybody's trying to find themselves. We're trying to find themselves. There are, groups working to try and make things better, but at that time we may not be going forward the way we want to. And so I think we need to take a step back and bring the world of soccer together in South Dakota and try and air things out and figure out where are we and where do we want to go.
So you're saying it's just like in the game. Sometimes you have to go back to go forward?
Sometimes you have to go back. Sometimes the best play is to put it back to the keeper and let's see where we're at, and then we'll start forward again. Exactly.
And the keeper better be communicating where they're going to send the ball, right?
Yeah, the keeper needs to be aware of the fact the ball is coming as well.
All right, good point. Well, we just got wrapped up with the State Cup this weekend here in Sioux Falls, and shout out, kudos to the teams that played. The level of competition in the state is obviously continuing to rise, and that's great to see. There were some changes this year. Instead of going to best 2 out of 3 to going to an aggregate scoring system, so teams played, if there were only 2 teams in the bracket, they played each other, and it wound up being the aggregate goal scored. There was another situation at the U16 girls with some great competition. We had 2 overtimes, shootouts in the first opening games on Friday night. Then there were 2 victories on Saturday. Sunday we wound up going with shootouts again to determine some games. At least the championship game, which would have been the championship in the old format. Mm-hmm. And an aggregate scoring, Rushmore Soccer Club came out on top. There are some people that are saying maybe there's some things left out there that are unanswered questions going that route. Why did we go to the aggregate scoring this year, and what's the future hold for that?
Well, it's I think when the competitive committee inside South Dakota Soccer looked at how to put this thing together, I sat in on their meeting for a little while. It was held back in November here in Sioux Falls, and I know the concept they were looking at more than anything else is what's good for the player, and maybe one game a day is the best way to go, and that was kind of the concept they wanted to follow. And it's along the same lines. It's not unusual within other states, but let me qualify, they have a lot more teams playing in their state cup. It's not unusual to see single elimination or to see what we saw with that type of thing. Aggregate scoring is not uncommon in the world and in the soccer world, and so I think it's kind of neat that we brought it in here, but it's also, as you said, with just the scoring of playing the round robin and then determining the champion is not really the culture that our fan base or our families are used to. And so they're used to playing through their pool play and then going to a championship game to determine that. And so I think for a lot of those folks, they felt there was something missing there. And so what we've got to do now is look back at what's good for the game, what's good for the families, for them to understand it, but we also have to listen to what the coaches are telling us, that what is good for the player is one game a day, what they should be doing. And so we tried it. We got mixed reviews, and so we go back, and this fall we'll get together and we'll talk it out again.
Yeah, right. I think aggregate scoring is pretty common in the world of adult soccer and professional soccer. I'm not sure how much that's been around with youth soccer, but it was an interesting twist, and it did make every single goal, not just every game, but every single goal counted. And with one game a day, the kids had an opportunity to leave it all on the field. So, along the lines with the State Cup, the timing this year was unfortunate because a lot of the teams that have been visiting and interviewing players and coaches over the weekend, a lot of them had not really been outdoors much at all and had not been able to get competition in advance of the State Cup because of the weather. They had competitions scheduled that were canceled. A few were able to get some games in. Some of the talk around the State Cup was that this event, the competitive cup, should be done in conjunction with the recreational tournament. And the rationale was there would be better publicity available, more media, would not be competing with the Howard Wood relays, which is an issue this weekend. That you'd have a larger pool of referees available, so referees would actually have the opportunity to work their way up to a competitive game or if someone got hurt, you'd have more referees available to fill in. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have been a supporter of that for several years. I want it to go that way, but my marketing hat comes out when we start talking that way. And what we'd like to do, or what I'd like to see done, is we've got an event that is a South Dakota State soccer event, and by adding both of them together, we've got a pretty large event going on. We can make it more of that festival, fun atmosphere, and the competition is still there. Logistically, it works for us. We have staff going one location. We have referees in one location. The cost would be less. I know the argument against it that I have heard is there are players that play not only on a recreational team in their small, usually in a small market, they also play for a competitive team as well, and they'd have to make a choice. And my answer to that, and again, this is my opinion, and action has not been taken by the state yet, but you know, it wasn't that long ago that recreational cup was a good-sized cup, and we did have 2 levels of play, and we played it over a 4-day period. Mm-hmm. And we could come back with that answer again. As an example, 14 girls, recreational soccer could play Friday, Saturday, and have our championship game on Saturday, and then the competitive girls could play on Sunday, Monday, and players could participate in both.
Do you think any of the competitive coaches might be reluctant to have their players play in a rec tournament 2 days before?
Oh, I'm sure they would, yeah. I'm sure they would. That's
sure
the same group that would probably be reluctant to have them play more than one game in a day.
Yeah. Well, and the other issue with that is to consider is that if those more competitive players are not playing with the rec team in the state rec tournament, that gives other kids more of an opportunity to play in that environment. So there's, 60-60 or 50-50 issues there.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if there's one thing that is a real passion of mine, it is that we lose sometimes the concept of what recreational soccer is there for, and it is to really give every kid every opportunity to play. And we have pushed hard to get to the point of recreational soccer is defined as every kid gets to play at least a half. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see that as part of the rules within the recreational tournament as well. These kids have been part of the team for a long time, and it's really about them experiencing the game and getting to love the game a little bit more. But we tend to, as adults, get our adult views and our experiences in the way, and winning becomes more important to us than making sure that the kids that we've been with all year are getting to get the right experience. And so we got to take a look at that. And it's not really something that we can adjust with rules. It's more of a culture thing that we just got to educate down the road. And that's one of the great things about the relationship South Dakota Soccer has with Soccer 605 is it is a wonderful opportunity for us to continue to do this education thing and find out about soccer all over the state.
Well, and that's a big part of our mission is to help build and strengthen the culture of soccer across the state by getting that information out, getting the players and coaches the recognition. Speaking of rules, Rich, a noted absence this weekend at the South Dakota State Cup was the Tempo FC club. We've seen them play in the indoor tournaments. They've got some really competitive U12-13 teams there. They weren't here at this event because they're not eligible to be at this event because they are a U.S. club soccer club instead of a U.S. Youth Soccer, South Dakota Soccer brand club. And from visiting with Robert Hoffman, I can't speak for Tempo, but from visiting with those folks, it seems that the reason they chose to go with U.S. club soccer was largely due to a ruling in South Dakota Soccer that there can be only one in a community, only one rec program in a community. They have some philosophical differences and chose to have a different type of rec program, and we're not allowed to under South Dakota Soccer rules. Now that ruling's only been around for a couple of years, I believe. Can you give me the origins of that and what the rationale is? But it almost seems like we're trying to prevent kids from playing soccer.
It is, and that's something I want to talk about in just a little bit. But the history of, it's actually a bylaw change that took place 2 years ago. And the concept is what we were trying to address was a coach or a couple of coaches not happy with the organization they were with and wanting to go form a brand new club. And the way we were loosely structured, that was quite possible, easy to do. Even though the bylaws said that you needed 4 teams to do it, there was a caveat that, if your market could not get to the 4 teams, or there were compelling reasons why you couldn't have 4 teams now, but the potential was to grow, that we would allow you in anyway. And so we were starting to pick up a few clubs here and there. And what was happening was they were in existence for 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, and then they were gone. And that was just something that wasn't good for the game as a whole, because then when they would leave, the kids that were along with them would disappear from soccer as well. And so we came in with this concept to try and address that and see how we could do it. And as it is with any rule or any law, is once you pass it, then you see that there are now some fallout from what you did. And regarding the tempo issue is we worked hard and had good communication, and we could have made it work. We could have, but it was a lot of a timing issue, as they wanted to get going so that they get into some play immediately, and it was going to take us a little bit of time to make the whole thing work. But we could have made it work, where not all of their players, but some of their players could have easily come over, and we still would have been within the scope of the bylaw change that got made. But Tempo and the parents and the board down there, like I said, kind of wanted to get moving, and I understand where they're going. And they also wanted to keep their younger kids, which would be considered a recreational program, and their older kids in one organization. And so U.S. Clubs was a great fit for them. Do we want them in South Dakota Soccer? By all means. By all means. It only makes sense that if we've got a program playing soccer in South Dakota, that we should have a relationship with them. And so that's something that this fall we're going to have to address again, is did we gain really a big enough piece of good from that bylaw change, or do we have to go back and take a look at that again and say, is it hurting us? Are we making rules to protect a little corner, and by doing that, is what we talked about, and I hope we talk about even more, by doing that, are we then taking other kids and saying, we're going to create a rule so now you cannot play with us? And that's what we've done.
Well, and as I understand the Federation and U.S. Youth Soccer and U.S. Soccer rules and bylaws, Tempo can be, and they can retain their U.S. Club Soccer membership if they so desire, and stay and join or rejoin South Dakota Soccer. So the rationale in the bylaw was that we had some small clubs coming up, and they would be around for a couple of years and then disappear. And so we created a bylaw to stop that.
What we were doing, and the biggest reason for it is mostly in our 2 largest markets, but even our 3rd largest market is Aberdeen. We would have a coach or a couple of coaches that wanted to do something outside of the realm of how the club was operating their organization, and by doing that, they would form their own club. And so we'd have a club, like I said, that would come into existence, live for a couple of years, and then they would leave.
Isn't it better to have loved soccer and left than never to have loved it at all?
Well, it is, but to have made a move to satisfy that short little period of time, to lose that many kids from soccer, that's a problem too.
Yeah. Well, I guess it almost seems like it's created monopoly clubs or monopoly rec associations in areas which, if competition is good on the field in soccer, it should be good off the field in soccer.
And that's one of the fallouts that we found after passing the bylaw, is that, you do have the monopoly. And again, it is it's much like it was in the old days with South Dakota Soccer, when we were the only act in town, that we did our things, and if you didn't like it, you can go somewhere else, and there was nowhere else to go, so tough.
Yeah, there is somewhere else to go now, and Tempo's proved that. So. And
even within the realm of soccer in the country, U.S. Youth Soccer is still the largest organization, but AYSO, U.S. Clubs, USSSA, SAY, the parent organization that eludes me right now, but there's lots of places that organizations can go register, and they're still under U.S. Soccer, the Federation, and they can still go play lots of tournaments.
Well, back a gajillion years ago, we discovered a SAY organization up in the Gettysburg area, I believe it was, that nobody even knew was there, and they didn't know the other soccer was out and available. So that can happen where people have a different organization. So hopefully that will move forward.